I secretly brought my in-laws to our home for the holidays, hoping to give my wife a surprise. But the moment my father-in-law, Arthur, stepped through the door, my wife's male assistant shoved him. Arthur slammed into the heavy shoe rack and groaned as his back gave out. What kind of trash thinks they can just walk into Mrs. Vance's mansion? You're so pathetic, you actually have the nerve to claim you're her family, the assistant sneered. I shouted for the servants to help Arthur, but the assistant blocked them. He even went as far as to push my mother-in-law Martha. You really think you're someone special? These are Mrs. Vance's employees. Serving a gold digger like you is bad enough. Now they have to serve your peasant parents too. Martha was so overwhelmed with rage that she had a heart attack on the spot. I frantically called my wife Vivian, telling her to get to the hospital immediately. Vivian sounded completely indifferent. Her voice was cold and full of contempt. Caleb already told me everything. I can't believe you had the audacity to bring those people to my house. Now you're making your mother fake an illness just to get me to show up? Get them out of there right now. If she dies, she dies. It's the holidays, I consider it a festive celebration. The call ended abruptly. Just as the line went dead, the doors to the emergency room swung open. The doctor pulled off his mask, his expression grim. He handed me a critical condition notice. My heart plummeted into my stomach. A nurse stepped up beside me, quietly reminding me to pay for Arthur's admission fees as well. I suddenly remembered that Arthur had also been injured when Caleb shoved him. He was still lying in a ward, waiting for treatment. I pulled out my wallet to swipe my card, only to find it declined. I tried 3 other cards. Every single one of them had been frozen. There was only one person who could have done this. Vivian. Rage boiled in my chest as I dialed her number again. It took 3 tries before she finally picked up. Vivian. Are you insane? You actually froze my accounts. My parents are in the hospital. They need this money for life-saving treatment. On the other end, Vivian's voice remained icy. Silas, this is a lesson for you. We had a deal. You were never to bring those hillbillies from your backwater town here. You broke that deal. That is your mother. This is a matter of life and death, Vivian. Unfreeze the cards now. I was practically screaming. The anxiety and fury felt like a volcano erupting inside me. She let out a dry, mocking laugh. I knew it. You only married me for the money. Now you're using death as an excuse to get your hands on my cash. It's pathetic. I provide you with a roof over your head. Don't get greedy and start eyeing my fortune. You are completely unreasonable. My mother is in critical condition. The doctor just issued the notice. Just come and see for yourself. This might be the last time you see her alive. The line went silent for a moment. For a split second, I thought I heard a hint of hesitation in her breath. But then, Caleb's voice drifted through the phone. Vivian, babe, look at how they're dressed. There's no way they're your parents. Didn't you say they went on a trip to the Hamptons last week? If you don't believe me, call the one who isn't sick. Let's see if he sounds like your father. Vivian's voice instantly hardened. Silas, I'm not coming to the hospital. If you claim that man is my father, put him on the phone. I rubbed my temples, a wave of helplessness washing over me. Arthur had fainted the moment he saw the first critical notice from Martha. He was currently unconscious in his bed. How was I supposed to wake him up just to prove his identity to his own daughter? But right now, I had no other choice. Hold on. He's unconscious. I'll try to wake him. I hurried to Arthur's bedside. His face was pale, his lips trembling as he let out incoherent moans. A doctor walked over and explained, he's suffered severe emotional shock. It's a minor stroke. He needs rest. I spoke into the phone, my voice cracking. Your father had a stroke. He can't speak. Just unfreeze the cards so I can pay the bills. Please. Your excuses are getting worse, Vivian scoffed before hanging up. I was shaking with rage. When I tried to call back, I realized she had blocked me. Suddenly, a notification popped up on my phone. It was a video from Caleb on WhatsApp. In the video, he and Vivian were in her office, kissing passionately as if no one else existed. Stop calling. Interrupting someone's fun is a sin, Caleb texted. The words were dripping with provocation and mockery. My eyes burned as I watched the screen. The woman who used to be my tender, caring wife was now being intimate with another man. But I didn't have time for heartbreak. Arthur and Martha needed me. Even if Vivian didn't care, I had to save them. They had always treated me with nothing but kindness. I started calling everyone I knew, of friends, relatives, even distant business associates. But every response I got was like a door slamming in my face. Silas, man, you know how it is. Business is slow. I don't have much liquidity right now. I'd love to help, but my funds are tied up in a new project. So one polite rejection followed another, leaving me exhausted and broken. Finally, I pushed a close friend for the truth. He told me that Vivian had posted a status on her private feed. She told everyone that anyone who lent me money was her enemy. She warned them they would never see that money again. I couldn't believe she could be so heartless. I swallowed my pride and begged my relatives, promising to pay them back double. They still said no. Some even blocked me immediately. Utterly defeated, I collapsed onto a cold plastic chair in the hospital hallway. For the past 2 years, we hadn't gone back to see my in-laws for the holidays. They missed Vivian terribly. I wanted to surprise her and make up for the time we lost. That's why I brought them to the city, hoping for a warm family reunion. Instead, the surprise turned into a nightmare. The moment they stepped into the mansion, they weren't met with hugs. They were met with a bucket of dirty mop water. Caleb stood in the foyer, looking at us with pure disgust. What kind of hobos are trying to sneak into the Vance estate? Silas, are these your parents? They look like typical trailer park trash. They even smell like dirt. Gross. I suppressed my rage and quickly wiped the water off my in-laws. Martha had a fiery temper. She couldn't stand being insulted like that. Who the hell are you? You have no manners. How dare you call Silas a hillbilly? Instead of backing down, Caleb got aggressive. He grabbed a heavy crystal vase from a side table and hurled it at Martha. I moved instinctively, blocking the throw. The vase grazed my hand before shattering on the floor. Martha wasn't hit, but a deep gash opened on my palm. Blood began to pour out instantly. Caleb stepped forward, looking smug and arrogant. I'm the future master of this house. I'm Vivian Vance's current boyfriend. Your precious Silas is about to be kicked to the curb. Get lost, you old hag. Arthur and Martha were too stunned to speak. They never imagined that their daughter, the girl they were so proud of, would be involved in something so shameful. Arthur was shaking with fury. He stepped forward to confront Caleb, but Caleb shoved him hard. Arthur went flying back, his spine slamming into the sharp edge of the shoe rack. I told you, trash isn't allowed here. You're too poor to even be a janitor in this house. Caleb laughed, his voice full of cruel mockery. Arthur groaned in agony, his face turning ghostly white. I held Arthur and screamed for the servants to help us. But the staff, who usually treated me with respect, acted like they were deaf. They stood there, watching, ignoring my cries for help. Caleb casually buffed his nails as if he were cleaning off a speck of dust. Someone tie these 3 peasants up. Throw them out into the snow so they can cool off. The servants moved in all at once. Martha stood in front of Arthur and me screaming, "Don't you dare! Vivian is my E." Before she could finish, Caleb shoved her out the front door. She stumbled and fell face first into the snow. I felt a surge of murderous rage. I tried to rush him, but 2 large security guards pinned me down. They used heavy rope to bind the 3 of us tightly. Then, they dragged us out into the yard like we were nothing but dead weight. It was a brutal winter night. The snow was deep and the wind was howling. I was thrown onto the frozen ground. The cold seeped through my thin clothes instantly, making my bones ache. Caleb stood in the doorway with a sadistic grin on his face. He clapped his hands, and the servants took the hint. They started packing snow into hard balls and pelting us with them. The impact of the ice was painful, but the humiliation was far worse. I struggled against my ropes, roaring, "Stop! Those are Vivian's parents." My voice was swallowed by the wind. No one cared. The snowballs kept coming, hitting my face and chest. My skin felt like it was on fire from the cold, and then it went numb. Arthur was old and his health was already fragile. He looked like he was fading away. Martha was still screaming insults at Caleb, her heart racing with fury and cold. Suddenly, Martha's voice cut off. I saw her face turn a terrifying shade of blue. Her body began to twitch violently. Then her eyes rolled back, and she went limp. "Mom!" I screamed in terror. I fought against the ropes, desperate to reach her. The servants finally looked scared. They stopped throwing snow and looked at each other nervously. I managed to break free from the loose bindings and crawled to her. Her breathing was shallow, almost non-existent. I begged the servants to call an ambulance, my voice cracking with desperation. The sight of her dying on the lawn finally snapped them out of it. Someone ran inside to call 911. Caleb just watched from the doorway, a look of boredom on his face. "Lucky you. Having a mom who knows how to play dead," he sneered. "Now get lost before you ruin the view." Arthur lay in his hospital bed, tears silently streaming down his face. He gripped my hand so hard his knuckles turned white. His lips moved, but no sound came out. I felt like a giant stone was sitting on my chest, making it impossible to breathe. I hated Vivian for her cruelty. Part of me wanted to just walk away and leave her to her mess. But I couldn't look at Arthur's broken expression and do nothing. I had to find Vivian. She had to face what she had done. I burst into her office, and the scene inside made me freeze. Vivian was sitting on Caleb's lap. She was wearing nothing but his oversized dress shirt, half unbuttoned. Their clothes were wrinkled, their hair a mess. The air in the room was thick with the scent of their recent activities. When she saw me, she didn't even look embarrassed. She just smirked. I bit my lip so hard I tasted blood, trying to hold back the scream of agony in my heart. My eyes welled up despite my best efforts to stay strong. "Oh, look who it is. Back to play the tragic hero again. Are you working this hard just to get your credit cards back?" She slowly stood up, stepping away from Caleb. She walked right up to me. She lit a long, thin cigarette and blew the smoke directly into my face. I started coughing. She knew I hated the smell of smoke. She used to never do this. I forced myself to stay calm through the anger. How many times do I have to tell you? Those are your parents. Why won't you just go see them? You're a professional liar, Silas. Why should I believe a word you say? It's just another one of your pathetic guilt trips to get my money. I pulled out the critical condition notice and slapped it onto her desk. Read the name on that paper. She didn't even glance at it. Instead, she stepped on the paper with her heel and slapped me across the face. Nice acting. You're even using props now. If you put this much effort into pleasing me like Caleb does, you'd have all the money you want. You're using the wrong strategy, honey. I couldn't stand the sight of her anymore. I turned to leave. Caleb, tie him up. Caleb grinned and lunged at me. He grabbed my arms and slammed me onto the floor. I fought back, but he was stronger, and I was already exhausted. Vivian, are you out of your mind? What are you doing? She walked over, and the sharp tip of her stiletto ground into my cheek. Where do you think you're going? Don't you want your money? This isn't like you. You used to be so good at manipulating people for cash. Why the sudden pride? My face burned with shame and pain. The humiliation felt like it was poisoning my blood. Let me go. If you don't want to save your parents, fine, but stop bringing up the past. I spat the words out through gritted teeth. You still won't admit it? And now you're cursing my parents too. She pressed harder. The thin heel felt like it was going to pierce through my skin. I struggled to breathe as the pressure intensified. Caleb joined in, kicking me hard in the stomach. I let out a choked cry and curled into a ball, my stomach churning with nausea. Vivian just watched with cold, unfeeling eyes. Babe, why are we keeping him here? Caleb asked, his hands wandering over her body. Vivian giggled and wrapped her arms around his neck, whispering in his ear. Keep him here so he can see how a real man handles me. If I let him out, he'll just find another way to annoy me with his fake drama. I lay there like a discarded dog, listening to their disgusting flirting. My heart went completely cold. Arthur and Martha were dying in a hospital, and I was trapped here in this nightmare. I started to regret everything. I shouldn't have brought them here. If they were back in their small town, they would at least be safe and warm. Arthur's bills weren't paid. The hospital was going to move him to a hallway bed. It was freezing outside. How could his old body survive that? The pain in my abdomen came in waves, and I felt myself slipping into unconsciousness. Suddenly, Vivian's phone rang. She groaned in annoyance and answered it on speaker. Vivian. A weak, desperate voice came through the speakers. Vivian froze. Dad. Why are you calling from a random number? Vivian, my child. Why did you let them beat us? Arthur's voice rasped through the phone speaker, thin, wet, and trembling with grief so profound it seemed to vibrate through the air of the luxurious office. Your mother. Martha. Her heart stopped. Vivian. They threw us in the snow. Why did you do this to us? The room fell dead silent. Vivian's hand froze midair. Her face drained of all color, the arrogance and irritation vanishing in an instant, replaced by a ghastly, hollow paleness. Dad. Her voice choked, barely a whisper. Dad, what are you talking about? You're in the Hamptons. Caleb said you were staying at the resort. The Hamptons. Arthur let out a broken, wheezing laugh that ended in a cough. We haven't left our town in 2 years. Silas brought us here to see you for the holidays. We just wanted to see our daughter. A loud, mechanical beep cut Arthur off. It was the harsh, flatline alarm of an EKG monitor, echoing through the phone receiver, followed by frantic medical personnel screaming in the background. Vefit. Get the crash cart. Prepare for emergency intubation. The call disconnected. I lay on the floor, the sharp heel of Vivian's stiletto still hovering an inch above my bruised cheek. Slowly, I pushed myself up. My muscles throbbed with pain, my clothes were torn and stained with dirt and blood, but I didn't feel any of it. I looked at Vivian. For the first time in 5 years, her eyes were wide with a terrifying, hysterical panic. She dropped her thin cigarette, her hands shaking so violently. She couldn't hold her phone. No, that's impossible, she stammered, backing away toward her desk. Caleb, you told me. You showed me the hotel reservation in the Hamptons. You said they sent a postcard. Caleb, who had been grinning arrogantly a second ago, backed up against the floor-to-ceiling windows. His face was pale, cold sweat dripping down his temples. Vivian, babe, listen to me, Caleb stuttered, his hands waving nervously. There must be a mistake. Maybe some homeless old people stole your dad's phone. You know how those trailer park people operate. Slap. Vivian spun around and delivered a stinging, violent slap straight across Caleb's face. Shut up, she shrieked, her voice cracking into a high-pitched, unhinged scream. Shut up. She turned toward me, her eyes bloodshot, her hands reaching out in desperation. Silas, where are they? Which hospital? Tell me. I stood straight. pulling my torn collar together. I wiped the warm trickles of blood from my face with the back of my hand. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I looked at her with eyes that held no anger, no hatred, no warmth, just a vast, empty abyss. You said it yourself, Vivian. I spoke, my voice devoid of any human inflection. If she dies, she dies. Consider it a festive celebration. Vivian reeled back as if I had struck her with a sledgehammer. She clutched her chest, struggling to breathe. Silas, please. I didn't know. Caleb told me. You didn't know because you didn't care. I cut her off softly. You unfreezed my cards to feed your lover, but you froze my accounts when my mother needed a life-saving injection. You stepped on her critical notice with your heel. I turned on my heel and walked toward the glass doors of the office. Silas. Wait. Silas. Vivian lunged forward, trying to grab my arm, but her trembling legs gave out, and she crashed onto the carpet, weeping hysterically as she scrambled after me. On her hands and knees. I didn't stop. I didn't look back once. When I arrived back at the municipal hospital, the winter night had settled into a freezing pitch-black haze. The emergency corridor was quiet, save for the hum of fluorescent lights and the squeak of medical carts over linoleum floors. I stood outside the double doors of the intensive care unit. A nurse walked out, carrying a tray of blood-stained gauze and empty 4 bags. She looked at my beaten, bloody face, her eyes filled with deep sympathy and sorrow. Mr. Silas? She asked quietly. How are they? I asked, my voice flat. Your father-in-law, Mr. Arthur. The stroke was stabilized, but the blunt force trauma to his spine caused permanent nerve damage. He is paralyzed from the waist down. I closed my eyes, breathing in the cold, medicinal air. Mother-in-law. The nurse lowered her head, avoiding my gaze. Mrs. Martha suffered a massive myocardial infarction caused by acute hypothermia and severe emotional distress. We performed CPR for 45 minutes. She paused, pulling a white sheet-covered form out from the secondary bay. Time of death was 9:42 p.m. My hands, resting in my coat pockets, clenched so tightly that my fingernails bit into my palms, drawing blood. Martha was dead. The woman who had baked fresh pies for me when I married her daughter, the woman who had knitted wool socks for me every winter because she knew I worked outdoors, the woman who had treated me better than my own biological family ever had, was gone. She died in the freezing snow, beaten by a spoiled assistant, mock-peltered with snowballs by servants, while her own daughter was sleeping with her lover in a heated penthouse office. Silas. A frantic, echoing scream bounced down the hospital corridor. Vivian burst through the double doors, still wearing Caleb's oversized dress shirt, her hair wild, her shoes missing. Behind her, Caleb was jogging nervously, looking around as if expecting police officers to appear from the shadows. Vivian rushed up to the rolling gurney, her hands trembling as she reached out to pull back the white sheet. Mom, wake up, Vivian sobbed, falling onto her knees beside the cart, clutching Martha's cold, stiff hand. Mom, I'm here. Look at me. I brought the doctors. I unfroze the cards. Mom, the sheet slipped down, revealing Martha's icy, blue-tinged face. Her eyes were slightly open, frozen in an expression of sheer terror and betrayal. Mom, Vivian shrieked, burying her face into Martha's cold chest, her tears soaking the white sheet. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know it was you. Caleb told me you were in the Hamptons. He said you were taking my money. I stood 3 feet away, watching her hysterical performance with cold detachment. Don't touch her, I said smoothly. Vivian raised her tear-stained face, looking at me with bloodshot, pleading eyes. Silas, tell her to wake up. Tell her I'm sorry. I'll give her everything. I'll buy her the best house in the country. I'll fire Caleb right now. She can't hear you, Vivian, I said, pulling a black pen from my coat. He died 2 hours ago, while you were stepping on her critical notice. I turned to the attending physician and took the death certificate from his clipboard. I signed my name clearly on the line designated for immediate family. Silas, Vance's son-in-law. Vivian reached out, grabbing the hem of my trousers from the floor. Silas, please, don't write your name alone. I'm her daughter. Let me sign. You lost the right to be her daughter the moment you threw her into the snow, I said, stepping back so her hand slid off my shoe into the dirt. I turned my gaze toward Caleb, who was standing near the elevator, trying to shrink into the wall. And as for you, I whispered, my voice echoing clearly through the quiet hall, the police are already on their way. 10 minutes later, 4 uniformed officers from the municipal police department marched into the hospital lobby. Caleb turned on his heel, attempting to sprint toward the stairwell, but 2 officers tackled him to the floor, slamming his face against the cold tiles. Caleb Reed, the lead detective announced, pulling out a pair of steel handcuffs. You are under arrest for grand larceny, elder abuse, assault, resulting in severe bodily harm, and reckless endangerment causing death. No. Let me go. Caleb screamed, thrashing on the floor, his nose bleeding onto the white tiles. It wasn't me. It was Mrs. Vance's order. She told me to clean out the house. She authorized the security guards. Vivian, still kneeling beside her mother's body, froze. She turned her head, slowly, looking at Caleb as if seeing him for the first time. What did you say? Vivian choked out. She told me to keep those redneck hillbillies away. Caleb shrieked, pointing his handcuffed wrists at Vivian. She gave me full authority over the mansion staff. I was just following her culture of keeping peasants away from her. Brand, you lying bastard. Vivian screamed, springing from the floor like a madwoman, lunging at Caleb and clawing at his face. You tricked me. You forged the postcards from the Hamptons. You embezzled $4 million from Vance Group's accounts last month. The officers pulled Vivian off Caleb, holding her back as Caleb was dragged into the elevator, cursing and screaming obscenities at her the entire way down. The hospital corridor fell quiet once more. Vivian stood there, her face covered in scratches, her shirt torn, her hands covered in her mother's post-mortem chill. She turned back toward me, looking at me with a pathetic, hollow hope. Silas, you heard him, right? She whimpered, taking a timid step toward me. He embezzled from me. He lied to me. I was a victim too. Silas, please come home with me. Let's take Dad home. I reached into my inner jacket pocket and pulled out a clean, crisp document. It was a pre-drafted petition for divorce, along with a complete revocation of marital property sharing. Sign it, I said, tossing the papers onto the small metal table beside Martha's body. Vivian stared at the document, her breath catching in her throat. Divorce? No. Silas, we've been married for 5 years. I love you. You don't love me, Vivian, I said softly, looking her dead in the eye. You loved having a quiet, obedient husband who stayed at home, cooked your meals, endured your temper, and let you play the powerful CEO while you slept with your assistant. I fired him. He's going to prison, she wept, grabbing the lapels of my coat. I'll give you half of Vance Group. I'll put your name on every asset. Just don't leave me alone. I gently, but firmly, unclasped her fingers from my coat, one by one. I don't want your money, Vivian, I said. Because starting tomorrow, Vance Group won't have a single cent left anyway. Vivian blinked, her tears pausing as a frown of confusion crossed her face. What do you mean? I pulled out my second phone, the sleek, encrypted satellite phone I hadn't used in 5 years. I pressed a speed dial button and put it on speaker. A deep, authoritative voice answered instantly on the first ring. Mr. Silas, the board of the Apex Global Conglomerate is assembled. We have executed the immediate recall of the $30 billion credit line extended to Vance Group. Vivian's eyes widened to the absolute limit. Her phone in her pocket began to ring frantically, once, twice, 10 times in rapid succession. She pulled it out with trembling hands. The screen displayed 50 frantic text alerts and missed calls from Vance Group's chief financial officer and board of directors. Urgent. Apex Global has canceled our primary supply contract. Alert, our stock is plummeting by 80% in after-hours trading. Warning, the bank has frozen all corporate accounts due to immediate debt recall. Who is Silas? Sterling. Vivian stared at the screen, then looked up at me, her mind completely collapsing under the weight of the revelation. Silas Sterling. 5 years ago, before I met Vivian, I was the sole heir and chief architect of the Apex Global Conglomerate, the largest private technology and logistics empire in the nation. When I met Vivian at a charity gala, she was a struggling young entrepreneur, trying to save her late father's small logistics firm. I fell in love with her ambition and her bright smile. To protect her pride, I hid my background. I secretly directed Apex Global to extend an unlimited credit line and exclusive contracts to Vance Group, turning her small company into a multi-billion-dollar powerhouse overnight. And to keep her focused on her career, I retired to the background, stepping down from active management to handle her home life, cooking her meals, caring for her aging parents, and letting her shine as the brilliant self-made CEO. She thought she was a genius who built an empire from scratch. She thought I was a penniless orphan who married her for her money. You. Vivian's voice shook so hard she could barely articulate the word. You're the chairman of Apex? I built Vance Group for you, Vivian. I said, my tone as cold as the snow outside. Every contract, every client, every loan you ever received came from my hand. I gave you the world because I thought you were a good woman who loved her family. I stepped closer to her, looking down at her pale, shattered face. And you used the empire I gave you to murder my mother and paralyze my father. No. Vivian shrieked, throwing herself onto the floor at my feet, grabbing my shoes, sobbing until her voice went completely raw. Silas, I was wrong. I was blind. Please take the company back. Take everything. Just don't look at me like that. I'm your wife. You're not my wife anymore, I said, pulling my foot out of her grip. Sign the papers, Vivian, or Apex Global's legal team will file formal corporate fraud and accomplice charges against you by sunrise. Vivian lay on the cold linoleum floor, surrounding by the sterile smell of disinfectant and her mother's lifeless body, weeping in utter, irreversible ruin. With shaking, bloody fingers, she picked up the pen and signed her name on the divorce petition. The downfall of Vivian Vance was swift, brutal, and absolute. Within 48 hours of Apex Global recalling its credit line and canceling all commercial partnerships, Vance Group declared complete bankruptcy. The news of the scandal exploded across the national media. Shocking. CEO Vivian Vance bankrupt after letting her own mother die in snow. For convicted assistant. APEX Global terminates Vance Group. Secret benefactor. Revealed as ex-husband Silas Sterling. The public backlash was merciless. Demonstrators gathered outside Vance Group's corporate headquarters throwing trash and red paint at the glass doors. The board of directors stripped Vivian of all executive titles and filed civil lawsuits against her to recover their personal losses. Her luxury mansion, her sports cars, her designer wardrobe, and her private bank accounts were seized by federal marshals to pay off corporate debts and legal penalties. Caleb Reed was tried 2 weeks later, faced with overwhelming CCTV footage from the mansion's security cameras, which showed him clearly beating Arthur, shoving Martha into the snow, and ordering the servants to throw ice balls. He was sentenced to 25 years in state prison without possibility of parole for second-degree murder and aggravated elder abuse. The mansion servants who participated in the abuse were all charged as accomplices, receiving sentences ranging from 3 to 7 years. As for Vivian, she was left with zero assets, a ruined reputation, and a mountain of personal debt totaling over $12 million. No firm in the country would hire her. No bank would extend her a loan. Her high society friends blocked her number overnight. 6 months later, spring had arrived in the city, but the wind near the northern cemetery remained crisp and cool. I stood before a marble headstone set on a grassy hill overlooking the valley. The headstone was carved with pristine gold lettering. Martha Sterling, beloved mother and faithful soul. Beside me sat Arthur in a state-of-the-art motorized wheelchair, wrapped in a warm wool blanket. Thanks to the top medical team I had brought in from Switzerland, his speech had partially recovered, though his legs remained permanently paralyzed. He looked at the fresh white lilies I placed on the grave, a soft, peaceful smile on his weathered face. She would have liked these flowers, Silas, Arthur said softly, his voice slightly raspy. She always loved white lilies, Dad. I smiled gently, adjusting his blanket. We'll plant a garden of them at our new estate in the country. Arthur patted my hand warmly. You're a good boy, Silas. God gave us a son when He gave us you. Just as we turned to leave toward our waiting car, a ragged, gaunt figure stepped out from behind a nearby pine tree. It was Vivian. She looked unrecognizable. She wore a dirty, faded trench coat over stained jeans. Her hair was matted and unwashed, her face pale and sunken, with deep black circles beneath her eyes. She carried a small plastic bag containing a few cheap, wilted supermarket carnations. When she saw Arthur sitting in the wheelchair, her eyes flared with a desperate, hysterical light. Dad. Silas, she cried out, stumbling forward through the grass, falling onto her knees a few feet away from us. Security guards from my private detail immediately stepped forward, blocking her path with heavy, impassable shoulders. Dad, please. Vivian wept, banging her fists against the grass. I'm sorry. I went to the old house. They locked me out. I don't have anywhere to live. I haven't eaten in 2 days. She looked up at me, her hands trembling as she held out the wilted carnations. Silas, please, just give me a job at Apex. Anything. I'll clean the floors. I'll be a janitor. Just let me see you. Arthur looked at his daughter. There was no anger in the old man's eyes, no hatred, only a profound, hollow pity. Vivian. Arthur spoke slowly, his voice clear and resonant. Your mother died in the snow waiting for you to come home. I lost my legs waiting for you to see the truth. He turned his wheelchair away, looking toward the bright spring horizon. You have no family here anymore. Vivian froze. Her hands dropped, the cheap carnations falling into the mud beneath her knees. I looked down at her one last time. I didn't say a single word. I didn't need to. Her punishment wasn't prison, nor was it physical pain. Her punishment was living every remaining day of her life in the freezing, solitary hell she had built with her own arrogant hands. I pushed Arthur's wheelchair toward the waiting Maybach, stepping into the warm afternoon sun. Behind us, Vivian's shattered, agonizing wails echoed across the quiet cemetery, drowned out seconds later by the rising spring wind.